If you grew up in the 80s or 90s, you know this name, Monster Cable.
If you're gonna watch a movie on DVD, you gotta have Monster Cable. Oh, Monster Cable. They're not gold-plated?
But you probably haven't heard the story. They started in a garage, and they ended up making some of the biggest headphones, most popular headphones in the world. They also had court battles with giant corporations and even dipped their toe into cryptocurrency. It's been a crazy ride. You probably haven't heard the name Monster Cable for a while, but you're about ready to find out why. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's find out why Monster Cable was one decision away from becoming one of the biggest hi-fi companies in the world. In the 80s or 90s, if you're serious about hi-fi, there was one name when it came to cables, and that was Monster Cables. It was a flex, kind of like having a leather Corvette jacket at the arcade. And they did something that nobody else was doing at the time. They took something that was commonplace and cheap and made it into a status symbol. They completely shaped how hi-fi accessories were marketed. They made headphones for Dr. Dre, you know, Beats, and became a bit of a case study in brilliant marketing and marketing overreach. And they kind of sued everyone. They were on top, and now they're not. However, they still survive today. We're going to talk about what they're doing too. And the man behind it all, his name is Noel Lee, or Noel Lee, because he was born on Christmas Day. You've heard of Monster Cable, but you probably don't know the Monster Cable story. It all began on a ping pong table in 1979 in San Francisco. And Noel, I'm going to call him Noel, even if it's Noel, he built his first cable, and he went to CES in 1979 and convinced retailers that premium cables were a thing and that they should sell them. And the original pitch was, hey, this is better than lamp cord, and it will unlock the potential of your speakers. Better conductivity, lower resistance. And the original price was 65 cents per foot, which back then was an eye-watering amount. And to support that, he did heavy in-store demos, heavy retail training, and A/B testing. In the 1990s, he went even higher end with the M series. Interconnects, RCAs, they expanded into home theater, power conditioners, and car audio cables. And distribution grew quickly. Best Buy, Circuit City. High margin for not only Monster Cable, but also for retailers. And public opinion was super high. If you wanted the best cable, you got Monster Cable. They were doing great, but it was nothing compared to what happened next. In the late 90s and early 2000s, they were at peak popularity, and at one point were doing $1 billion in revenue. Now that number includes retail pricing, but it's still a significant amount of money for a cable company. And they controlled a 60% market share in hi-fi cables and accessories. You couldn't go into Best Buy or Circuit City without seeing a Monster Cable end cap. And in 2008, they partnered with Dr. Dre and Jimmy Levine, or Levine, I don't know how to say it. And the Monster engineers created the first Beats headphone. They handled R&D and distribution. Remember, they were in all those stores already. Manufacturing. Beats, well, they handled brand and marketing. And I don't think I need to tell you that it was huge. Beats were everywhere. I had a pair of Beats, and it was the first headphone that really leaned into the bass. This is where it gets a little bit complicated, but this is also where it gets super interesting. So while Monster as a company held no ownership in Beats, Noel personally held about a 5% stake in Beats. Now, there was a stipulation in the contract called a change of control clause, which means if Beats sold to, well, anybody, Monster's licensing deal could be terminated. Do you remember HTC? They were an early pioneer in smartphones and worked with Microsoft and Google. But by 2012, they were in sharp decline. Revenue down 35% year over year. Profits dropped 70%. So they shifted their strategy. They made the HTC One. It was a hero product. Basically, they were trying to emulate the iPhone and Samsung. And they bought just over a 50% stake in Beats, which made them the majority owner. And that automatically triggered the change of control clause. And the result was Monster was cut out. No more manufacturing, no more distribution. With HTC partnering with Beats, now there were things like EQ, bundled Beats headphones with HTC products. And now HTC wasn't just a cell phone company, well, they were a lifestyle company because of Beats. They needed Beats way more than Beats needed HTC, to the tune of $300 million for that majority stake. But with the HTC acquisition, Monster was cut out completely. Now, Noel Lee wasn't out everything because he personally owned that 5% stake. But it gets even more interesting because in 2014, Apple buys Beats. Forget this, $3 billion. So here's the takeaway. Noel had a 5% stake in Beats. When HTC bought Beats, Noel sold that 5% stake. Now, if he would have waited just a little bit longer, that 5% stake in Beats would have been worth about $150 million after the Apple acquisition. It's not public knowledge about what his 5% stake was worth before Apple, but it's safe to say that after Apple, it would have been worth a little bit more, like probably 10 times more. Think about this gut punch. You go from creating and manufacturing Beats headphones to nothing. You get mad, you sell your stake, and then Apple comes in and buys it. I don't think I'd be able to sleep at night. After this whole thing went down, Monster kind of went into what I would call the litigation years. To set the table here a little bit, they had hundreds of trademarks and hundreds of patents. So, obviously, they went after almost every company that had the word Monster in it. Targets include Monster.com, Monster Energy, Disney with Monsters Inc. They even went after little companies. And some would say their reputation went from high-end cables to Beats to litigious. They tried to sue HTC and Beats, and they lost and ended up having to pay $4.4 million in court fees. They also went after Monster Mini Golf. When did that's a video I should make. When did mini golf go away? Anyway, it was you glow in the dark mini golf, which sounds kind of awesome.
Not Disney.
So with Disney, the lawsuit was ultimately dropped because of some type of settlement. Nobody knows exactly what that settlement was, but, well, Disney obviously kept Monsters, Inc. because I have a copy of it on DVD. There's a term called trademark bullying. And when Monster took on Monster Mini Golf, again, the thing was settled out of court. And it garnered a bunch of public attention. And the Monster Cable brand was kind of tarnished in that. They even got to the point where they were soliciting eBay donations. Monster Cable was. The public details of the settlement were Monster dropped a lawsuit. They agreed to pay Monster Mini Golf's legal fees, which came to about $100,000. Monster Mini Golf kept their name. And a weird charity clause where Monster Mini Golf would donate $100 a month to 2 charities, and Monster Cable would match those donations. The takeaway was Monster Cable's reputation was tarnished, damaged, and Noel Lee said that's kind of the reason why we settled this thing. A lot of these numbers aren't really public, so don't take this as fact, but the takeaway is after the Beats deal, well, Monster Cable's revenue obviously declined. And there is some public stuff out there, actually from the SEC, which we're going to get into. But as far as people working there, it was estimated that about 850 during the Beats era, down to fewer than 50 by the late 2010s. And in 2021, some reports say that there's less than 10 people working at Monster. So what happened? Well, their retail presence also started to decline. And who knows what was behind that? I mean, we can speculate, right? Because Best Buy sells a bunch of Beats headphones, so they probably had a little bit of influence as to the other brands that Best Buy is carrying. I'm not saying that happened, but it kind of makes sense. Then you also have to take into consideration what was going on, well, Amazon. You can buy cheap HDMI cables that have great reviews, cheap RCA cables that have great reviews, cheap speaker cables that have great reviews. And at the end of the 2010s, Best Buy basically just phased out Monster. Now when you go into Best Buy, AudioQuest, I think probably filled that hole. And by 2018, basically Monster wasn't being sold at Best Buy at all. But this is where the story gets even weirder. Premium cable company making Beats headphones, suing a lot of people to cryptocurrency as a publicly traded company? So in order to understand that, we need to understand what a shell company is. It's a company that's already public, but they really don't do anything. So think about a storefront with the lights on, but there's nobody in it and there's nobody selling anything. However, all the paperwork is up to date. So what a company does is they find a shell company. No debts, but current filings. Step 2 is they swap shares. And then the private company gets most of the shell's shares. Step 3, the shell company changes its name and puts the private company's leadership into place. Step 4, voila. That private company is now a public company and they didn't have to do an IPO. Why? Because it's faster and cheaper than doing an IPO. Gives easier access to fundraising, and founders of the private company have way more control than a bank-owned IPO.
Merger. A merger.
And in April 12th of 2018, Monster Cable did that with Atlantic Acquisition Inc., a public shell. That shell was then renamed to Monster Products Inc. So they were public, but those shares sold over the counter. So it wasn't on the New York Stock Exchange and it wasn't on the NASDAQ. But soon after that, Monster Products Inc. now, they wanted to get into the crypto game. And they proposed the Monster Money Token. The goal was to raise $300 million for a new e-commerce platform. And the result wasn't great. That stock sunk to what's called a penny stock. And I don't know anything about crypto, but I guess in 2018, crypto wasn't doing well. And then Monster pivoted more into licensing the name. So what does licensing mean? Well, it means they don't make anything. Somebody else is going to make something and they're going to sell it, but they're going to use the name. Because Monster still has a great name. I remember it. I think everybody remembers Monster. Monster Cable. Monster Products Inc. But I guess they're dealing, obviously, in cables, power, gaming, LED lights, and there still is some quality involved with it. So somebody can't just take the name and put it on a toaster. Monster still has to approve the product, approve the quality, approve the logo, approve the marketing. And they do get final sign-off or final approval. And then they get royalties or a percentage or a guaranteed amount. They have no inventory and they have no manufacturing now. So the overhead is super low. In essence, everybody benefits. A company can sell a brand that has some type of recognition and reputation. Monster still makes money. You can still find Monster cables today. Go on Amazon. They're called Monster Essentials. HDMI charging speaker cables, pretty much what they were known for back in the day.
If you're gonna watch a movie on DVD, you gotta have Monster Cable.
This is a cool story, and I don't know really what to take away from it because it's like the American success story. Somebody starts making something in their garage and they build it into a huge company, and one that has a great reputation, and one that for a lot of us was aspirational. Then they start making headphones for Beats, and they had a lot of legit innovation like multi-strand cables, really overbuilt and quality HDMI cables, high-grade power conditioners. They did a lot of great things, and it wasn't all just snake oil. They also had a lifetime guarantee, which people loved.
When I first started using Monster Power, I was looking for ways to quiet my stage sound down. For any different venue, you might have great power in one, you might have crap power in another one. Monster Power gives you a power source, conditions the power coming in, cleans everything up. That's great too, and Monster Power takes care of all that.
And there's stories of musicians having their cables replaced over decades, and Monster still honoring that lifetime warranty. However, I've heard that lifetime warranty is no longer around. Do you guys know? Anybody out there know if they still offer lifetime warranty. But all the baggage that goes along with a cable company now also went on with Monster Cable then. In the 90s, they were selling the M series. The M2.2 speaker cable, which came out in 1999, was about $425 for 2 8-foot runs. So that's kind of like what we have today. They also kind of pioneered aggressive marketing, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. They had big parties at CES every year, which included celebrities like Mary J. Blige, Lady Gaga.
A lifetime monster award goes Carlos.
Our mission is to make the quality higher, live with a high standard.
Shaquille O'Neal, and they revolutionized and really wrote the playbook for retail upselling, quality cables. Is that good or bad? I don't know. But even though they're not what they used to be, I still think it's a bit of a success story because they're still around. Obviously, Noel Lee is pretty much a genius when it comes to business. They took reputation hits. And the whole reason I made this video is because I thought, is Monster Cable still around? And they are, but not the way that they used to be. What are your opinions, experiences with Monster Cable? I want to hear about them. If you want to support the channel, you can check out some of the links in the description. We have a coffee club. You get a free Cam Coffee Club mug if you sign up for the Cam Coffee Club, which means you get really good coffee each month, a different flavor. If you liked this video, why don't you check out my video about cassettes or CDs? I'll put them up here. Thanks for watching.
If you're gonna watch a movie on DVD, you gotta have Monster Cable.
That's great too, and Monster Power takes care of all that.